Hey guys, so glad you've joined us on the podcast today. I'm really excited to have another one of these case study interviews, this time with Melissa Hilton, who is the Vice President of Development and the Executive Director of Erie Family Health Foundation. Now, I'm excited for you to hear from Melissa today because she is part of a large organization, 100 million plus. And what sometimes surprises people that I talk to, and so I want to demystify or kind of debunk that today, is that large organizations they actually still need to diversify their funding. That's not what we're debunking. That's what I'm telling you. I have every size organization come to me in hopes of diversifying funding. They still need more general operating revenue so that they can grow and invest in new initiatives and help with cash flow when things change with state and government funding. I also loved hearing from her as I interviewed her. There's always room to be more intentional in relationship building. And I look at Melissa as one of those very natural relationship builders. She's that person who every time I get on with her, she wants to ask about me. She wanted to ask about a family member who had been ill of mine, asked about my holidays, everything. So hear from Melissa today. Hear how she's starting to have different conversations, or deeper in some sense, or just wider or broader when it comes to moving into those financial conversations. And I love when we start the conversation because she's really, she is this veteran in fundraising. I love her stories that she has, really. But I love hearing how she's used her strengths, her past degrees, her past jobs, especially even in finance, in fundraising. So I think you'll be really interested to hear what Melissa has to share today. So enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comments. Melissa, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me, Sherry.
Good. Well, I'm excited for anybody who's listening today to really, I would say, be inspired by you as someone who has been a fundraiser for a long time. I even had to take a minute and hop on your LinkedIn profile before we talked today, just to really see the decades of fundraising that you've been doing and with excellence. And so I would just love for you to walk us through your journey. Like, how in the world did you become a fundraiser? Because I know you have an interesting journey to doing this, but I'd love to hear your story.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, it's true. I have a non-traditional pathway into fundraising. My story starts in San Antonio, Texas, where I grew up. I went east to college, and then I majored in English in college. I like to say it's a great degree. I use English every day. After college, I went to Washington, D.C. I worked first doing press work at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and then did some legislative work for a congressman from my home state of Texas and became his press secretary. And after that, I decided to go off to business school. Actually, at the time, my business school's degree was called a Master's in Public and Private Management. And the focus was really on management skills in the public, private, and nonprofit sector, which are really all the same set of skills. So
Right.
I took that knowledge and I went afterwards to become a public finance investment banker. I worked in finance for about 6 years. And then I transitioned to the museum world, where I spent the next 16 plus years doing many different things in the museum world. I worked at the Field Museum in Chicago for most of that time, working with the first as the chief of staff to the person who oversaw exhibitions, education, the business enterprises of the museum. Um, and then I went after that, and then all the marketing. And then I did marketing for the museum. And then at some point, I like to say I got promoted to fundraising.
I'll take it as a promotion.
Right. I think that although I would have never chosen it, I didn't really even know there was a profession of fundraising. I think what I discovered is that my relationship building skills, my communication skills, the strategic knowledge, and then adding to that, really understanding the finances of an organization and being able to communicate those with donors really added up to making me effective as a fundraiser. After a while, I moved on and I came to Erie Family Health Centers, where I have been for about 12 years now. And I think what I've come to realize is that most people are really terrified of fundraising. They think it's the hardest thing you can do. I think that everything else people do is really hard, and I come to appreciate that fundraising is probably the best job in any organization
Mm,
because you get to support a wonderful mission. You get to tell the story, you get to do work that's very affirming all the time,
yeah,
and play an important role in the team.
I love it. Melissa, I always say people say they hate fundraising, but I think they hate what they think fundraising
Yeah,
is. Because if they really did understand that it's like for you, it's very natural to build relationships, to integrate that, I love it, your English degree and the finance background and the relationship building. Like you're a natural at that. And so it's never pushy. It's never, what people fear of like used car salesman. It's never that. And it really, I mean, I agree. I think it really is an amazing opportunity within an organization to be that mouthpiece of all the great work that the mission is doing. So
yes,
good.
agreed,
Okay, so
agreed.
yeah, so speaking of, okay, so here's the other part I want to lay on top of our conversation today. So your organization you work with is Erie Family Health. Um, give me this might be a loaded question, but like give me a rundown of how life has been, COVID, post-COVID, if I can call it post-COVID. Um, Help us understand your model of being an FQHC. Just paint the picture of that model and what that meant these last few years and how you've brought your team through this.
Absolutely. Well, can I step back and just explain a little bit about what it
Yes,
means to be a federally qualified health
please.
center and a little bit of Erie's story? And I'm going to incorporate some of the lessons I learned from you in terms of how I talk about what Erie does. So I will tell
Good.
you
Okay,
that
go for it.
Erie really exists because we have a critical problem in our country, and that is that not everyone has an equal chance to live their healthiest lives. So what we do to address that is we provide access to affordable, holistic, and really exceptional health care. We provide that health care regardless of ability to pay, immigration status, or insurance status. And what Erie has more than 88,000 patients across 13 sites in the Chicago region. And our services include robust medical, dental, and mental health care, support services outside the exam room, and then training to build the workforce for safety net healthcare and to work on that next generation of healthcare providers. So we are part of a national movement called the Federally Qualified Health Center movement that really was an outgrowth of the civil rights movement. So at the time that people were really, it's just appropriate to be talking about this since it was just Martin
Yes.
Luther King's birthday.
Yes.
And we're thinking back about the struggles that still exist in many ways today to address discrimination in our country. There were a team of groups of people, mainly medical professionals, young doctors, that called attention to health disparities in the country, and their efforts led to the creation of a federal program called the Federally Qualified Health Center Program. It lives in the Department of Health and Human Services, and this program now has 1,400 health centers across the United States serving 30.5 million people, which is
Wow.
one in every 11 person in the United States. So
Wow.
it's kind of not really that visible, but it's a huge impact.
Yes.
And so, really, the Erie's story is really much like all these other health centers. We started as a free clinic in the basement of another organization, Erie Neighborhood House. In 1957, we became our own organization in 1970. We became an FQHC in the 1980s, and we've been growing and working on our mission since then. One of the things about the health center movement and the program is that we actually have literally about 180 requirements that we have to meet to
Hmm.
be a federally qualified health center. We get benefits. We get to compete for federal grants, which compose about 17% of our revenue. Our doctors get to have loan forgiveness for their medical school loans if they work with us, and we get our insurance from the federal government for malpractice, among other things. So, but it's not easy, and there's a very high degree of accountability. One of the unique features of being a health center is that our board has to consist of primarily patients or parents of patients that get care at a health center, which is an important piece of information in the fundraising world when you have, think of any social service agency having your clients as your board members. That upends the traditional fundraising model, but it's also extremely meaningful, and we are truly being led by the people who receive our care at our health centers. So, so that's the background, and then maybe I'll pause and take a little break, and you can you ask me another question.
I've loved, I think a lot of the work we've talked about as we've looked ahead and said, how do we start securing, just more charitable revenue, more general operating revenue? We've had a lot of discussions about, do donors understand how you're funded?
Right.
We see this big Erie Family Health, $100 million budget plus. And so can my gift make an impact? Right. And the answer is, oh my gosh, yes. It's, you can only serve as many people as giving allows, really. It's not that just extra nice to have. It is an integral part of the work. But I've loved the board element of having the patients and non-patients. Just the complexity is not the word, but the interest of having so many voices at the table and really telling the entire community, like everybody has to be coming together to lead, to fund, to serve, for exactly what you're saying. I've loved that, clarifying the need to the public, because a lot of people don't understand and just think, okay, cool, my tax dollars fully fund that organization, which is not the truth.
And then I think your comment raised another point, and kind of tying back to your prior question about how we came through the pandemic, because I do think that it has been a challenging time for health centers. And on the one hand, we've gotten a lot of revenue to respond to the public health crisis. But during the time of COVID, a lot of things happened that really highly impacted the healthcare field. There's a lot of burnout, people being on the front lines during a super challenging time. One of the resulting in a lot of demand for healthcare workers, rising salaries, rising costs. We're a people business, so salaries are the lion's share of our budget. We also experienced, we had a lot of revenue to respond to the crisis. But then that all dried up, and we were left with kind of looking at more of a mismatch between our expenses and our revenue, that we really had to think about what is sustainability in our model, what is sustainability in our funding, and I think philanthropy has an important role to play in that. So I think those are just some of the impacts of the pandemic. We moved really fast. We introduced things we thought we would never do, like telehealth. We introduced a program to address the social drivers of health, which has become such an important term in healthcare. All those things outside the exam room, which account for more than half of your health. Whether you have a safe place to walk outdoors, access to healthy food, transportation to get to work and places you need to go, those are critical things that affect health. So we implemented a program to screen people for those needs and figure out how we could link them to resources and support those aspects of health as well. So we've done a lot, and we've, it's now we're in navigating the next phase. And from a fundraising standpoint too, it was sort of like being in the middle of working for a disaster relief organization during a disaster. Lots and lots of work, but a big adrenaline rush. And now I think we're kind of settling in. And trying to reframe the story.
Yeah, and I remember even some of our early conversations when I was asking about your team and just, tone and are we ready to, climb this hill of fundraising? And I remember you honestly saying, like, we're tired. We carried a lot. I mean, everybody in your organization. That's why, I love we started talking about the relational aspect, because there's really never been a more important time for your work. I don't think, especially coming off the pandemic. And what an honor to raise funds for an organization that has come and stood in the gap in our community for these not only decades, but especially these last few years. It's really an honor to, I would think, to have those conversations with donors who stood up and said, yeah, I want to help during this time. And you guys really facilitate that. It's exciting. Okay, so Melissa, when we started having conversations, and I know we were introduced through a board member, and as I was learning about Erie Family Health, you had just completed a pretty extensive assessment in your fundraising department, the opportunities, trends coming out of COVID. Talk to me a little bit about what was working, because I think a lot of things were working, and maybe what wasn't working, what you were hoping to really solve when we started working together.
Sure. So, I mean, I mentioned to you about our model, about being patient led, and also, I've been here a little bit more than a decade, 12 years, and we've seen a lot of, prior to the pandemic, we had seen a lot of growth during that time period. The Affordable Care Act had led to a lot of expansion of health centers. We've gone into new communities outside Chicago and Evanston, in Lake County, where we were the local health center, and that gave us an entree to a new group of supporters. So we've seen a lot of growth, and yet at the same time, that growth had started to flatten a little bit. Our individual giving was still a very small portion of our total fundraising distribution, which I think is unusual for most nonprofits and reflecting the fact that we have not had historically had access to many high net worth individual donors. So that was one of the things that we had seen. I think that there was a lot of activity going on, maybe not necessarily the highest return on all of that activity, particularly in event fundraising, which also it kind of leveled out. So we saw, and we also have created back in 2016, a supporting foundation. So a separate 501c3 to help us with our private philanthropy. It's controlled by our governing board. It exists to support Erie, but we hadn't really fully leveraged that in terms of trying to figure out how we could leverage that new entity to help us with opening doors and expanding our fundraising efforts. So that's kind of where we were. We've made a lot of progress, but I think we were looking for the next phase where we could take that.
And I mean, you've continually, I would say, in your team have invested in getting help. Like, talk to me a little bit about that outsider's perspective, or having somebody else come in, whether it's the amazing work that the kind of person did with the assessment, or ultimately deciding to bring me on to partner with you on some of these initiatives. As a seasoned fundraiser, but still looking for that outside help. Why do you approach it that way?
I think that it helps to have an outside eye and an outside framework sometimes, just to take a fresh look. Maybe in the case of working with other fundraisers, we've used people to help us when we did many capital campaigns for new health center sites, and really benefited from somebody helping us put the pieces in place with a case for support, help us organize our pyramid, help us just through the process of donor identification, cultivation, and the like. So I think that it's helped us at different points in focused ways where we needed to expand our team. In working with you, Sherry, I think it gave us the opportunity to do a couple of things. I think that you bring you have a unique approach to framing fundraising needs that is very strategic, that is rooted in kind of an understanding of organizational finances and needs. I think it spoke to some of our executive team members, and I think it does resonate with major donors in a new way. So it gave us a new set of tools, and I think that's something that can help. Working with an outside professional can help you just break a pattern and try to take a different approach. It might not Doesn't mean you stop doing everything the way you're doing, but it
Right.
might enable you to add something valuable to overlay and maybe to shift the work that you're doing to a new model.
So good. I always love asking that question and hearing you describe how I feel about when I invest in coaches in my own business or someone to come in and give objectivity, because I like to think I have all the solutions and like can figure it out. But it really is that objectivity is a piece that, frankly, I think has been a secret of my own like business success, to have somebody come in and say, have you thought of doing it this way? Uh, I kind of have, but I've not done it, or no, I haven't thought of it that way. So I love the objectivity piece. Is fun for me, just to ask those questions, and sometimes have people say, well, what should we stop doing so we can start doing other things? Is a real opportunity, and maybe one of the best parts about my work. So Melissa, could you talk about maybe what particular aspects of our work maybe kind of resonate with you or have made the most difference for you and your team?
Well, I think that, as I said before, I think your overall approach of looking at fundraising in an integrated way with the organization's overall financial needs, making it part of the strategic approach of the sustainability of the organization, the success of the organization, I think has been a very helpful framework. Another thing that's been quite valuable to me are just some of the tools that you provided, the communications piece, the way to the conversation starter deck. We did work with your colleague on creating a case for support. So just having that toolkit of language, a presentation deck, those things have been really wonderful new, uh, how do I say, arrows in our quiver.
Yeah,
I don't know if I
I
have
love
the
it.
right analogy there, but they've been very valuable for us to have. The other thing that we've really started to leverage is the tracking tool that you gave us, the forecasting tool. Our team has worked kind of customized to figure out how we make that work for our
Yeah,
organization, where we want to, where government grants is an important part of our fundraising mix, and we want to work that into our overall forecasting tool. It's, I think, helping us to look not just where we've been, but look ahead to where we're going.
mm-hmm.
So we're not just tracking the grants that have been received, but looking at the impact for future months, but
Yeah,
also making ourselves look ahead. What do we need to do now to make next year um, reach the goals that we hope to achieve in the next year?
yeah,
So I think that has given us tools to be more aware of how we're spending our time. And we've actively built not a lot of donor cultivation, stewardship, and also prospecting into our schedule more than in the past. I think that
great.
for us, while of course an important part of our fundraising success is going to be building on existing donor relationships, we don't have enough donors yet in our um, that we have relationships with that are going to get us where we want to go.
So Melissa, we've spent a lot of time in Excel, in
Yes.
forecasting, looking at the numbers. I'm so thankful you have a team that is numbers focused and can run those reports so strongly. Um, how's your team responded to taking, I might say, like this multi-year or look ahead approach, thinking further ahead, and who are we planning on soliciting even in 24 months, and how does that uh, really influence what we do today? How's your team responded to that?
I think they're finding it energizing. The grants team that is working with the foundations, the larger family foundations, has initiated a monthly meeting where they work on prospecting. They've worked more to assign prospects to team members. It's something that I think there's a lot of excitement about doing, and we're strategizing collectively about how we can open doors to um, new donors and also what we're doing to communicate with our existing donors. So I think that people have responded well to it. It's interesting that it's coincided with the time in which we are, as an organization, are looking at steps that we need to take to for our long-term financial stability as well. And we're undergoing some working with a consultant around what we're calling our transformation efforts, which really looks at what do we need to change in our healthcare model to have the revenues that we need and to better match revenues against expenses while still ensuring that we are providing high quality care that's accessible and comprehensive to as many people as possible. So as part of that effort, there's multi-year budgeting going on. So the fact that we are thinking about a multi-year budget makes us ready to be part of the conversation that is driving the organization forward strategically.
I love that. Tell me how your conversations with donors have changed. A lot of our work has been, we love when people are giving, it's restricted or to a project that they're really passionate about, but we did feel like there was an opportunity to start having more broader general operating conversations. Talk to me a little bit about the success you've had in that area.
Well, I think the very first thing is more conversations with donors. I think we're just definitely asking more. Can we sit down? Can we talk? My family are hockey fans, and there's a phrase in hockey like "good things happen when pucks and bodies go to the net." So I'm saying good things happen when you talk to donors. Even if what you learn from a donor is that you're not the right organization for them, or you're not, they may not be prioritizing giving to you, that's information that can help inform where that relationship goes and where you spend your time. So what I have found is that the pyramid, the conversation around that is oriented, that you've provided us with, the toolkit to drive conversations to more general operations, is opening up meaningful conversations. And I'm finding that presenting the pyramid is something that many donors respond to, and we have had people step up their giving. In some cases, it's just to the bottom of the pyramid, but it's still upward direction.
Right. And it's gift growth.
Yes, so it's step by step. But we are, it is something that, I definitely know there are some donors that just love giving to restricted things, and that's what gives them joy, and that's where they're going to give their best gifts. So we'll keep providing them with those opportunities. But where we can turn people to general operations as the highest priority, we're doing that.
And I find, and I think you had this with a couple early conversations, sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Like I think oftentimes we assume people want to fund a project, or it feels easier to present a project, but sometimes there is that innocent, like, oh yeah, if that's what you need me to do, like it's really a non-issue. I think this surprises some fundraisers I work with to say, oh, I was just told that people love a project. People want to fund something they can touch and feel. Again, we want to respect that, but if you have a deep relationship with somebody, it's actually, I find, easier to pivot that gift to a general operating gift. I think I've seen you do that time and time again. Okay, couple last questions here. Any key surprises or takeaways that maybe came from our work that you're like, oh, I didn't think we'd be doing that together, but you look on in a positive way?
I think that once getting into the creation of the conversation starter deck, I think it was a little intimidating at first, trying to figure out what would that look like for Erie. There was a lot of work, frankly, for our finance team to figure out how we reorganized our budgets to fit your template. And once we did that, though, I think it's something that I find to be quite valuable. We ended up transitioning the way we presented the information in the annual report to reflect that, which isn't something I hadn't really thought about all the applications of where else we might take that conversation, but I think that actually turned out really great. And I will say, initially, you talked about, oh, we should create the case for support, the case for support. I didn't really jump on that at first, but ultimately we did, and I definitely found that to be something that is valuable. I think we're starting to figure out ways to use that. So appreciate that we did that work. And I think when you say case for support and what I thought a case for support was, I think it's a little bit different. It's more like a tool, a resource for communication that that follows the model of talking about what is our need, what is our response, some of the opportunities for funders. It really gives you a set of words that you can use to go alongside the conversation.
Yeah, it's all of these things that I always call, like, fundraising is like removing the blocks that are keeping people from maybe investing in a bigger way, or understanding you have a financial need, or they may understand one area of what you do. We see you doing this, but like, hold on, we're doing these 16 other things.
Yeah.
And how do we say that in a way that's not overwhelming, but actually inspires them and attracts them?
Right. I think it's helped us simplify our conversations, because we always felt we had to give them almost a laundry list of everything we did. It's kind of exhausting. We do so many things.
We do a lot of things.
We do a lot of things, but to really take it to high level and then hear what people talk about, then you can dig down and focus on a specific area that's of more specific interest to a funder. But you don't have to go through every activity. Maybe talking less and listening more is another thing that I think I took away from it.
So good, which is the relationship building,
right?
Of what it should be.
Yeah.
One last question. I don't have, I wasn't thinking of asking, but it's coming to mind as you're talking. You're also balancing not only a large annual fund, but also this amazing opportunity with a capital campaign. Can you just talk a little bit about how you're dancing in both of those worlds, and maybe some of the ways you've been using to solicit some pretty large, substantial gifts for that capital campaign, and just how you're balancing that as a team?
Yes, well, it's exciting. We are working towards opening our newest site on the west side of Chicago in West Garfield Park. This is a community that has experienced decades of disinvestment. There were really, ever since the riots and the protests that followed the assassination of Martin Luther King, the neighborhood has really not benefited from reinvestment. So we're excited to be part of an initiative that's really coming from the community. It's called the Sankofa Wellness Village, and the community is looking for investments that will help it recover some of what has been lost and build on the assets that are still there. We're excited that we're part of something called the Sankofa Village Wellness Center, which includes a new Erie Health Center site, a fitness gym and fitness center for the YMCA, services from our hospital partner for the project, Rush Medical Center. There'll be a banking facility and much, much more. So we are raising funds for this project. Our share of this new $43 million building is about $5 million. My approach to it has been more of trying to just focus on bigger gifts for that and not doing a mass capital campaign with a general donor base. We've gotten to about $3 million through that effort. So we'll see how we finish that off. But it is, I think, a balancing act, and I am finding there are some donors that I ask that really don't want to invest in capital. But maybe once we're up and operating, they might be excited by the operating opportunities to support the new site opening.
Yeah, that's good. And you've been doing the relationship building with them to where you can have that honest conversation, which I think is the good point. So good. Melissa, how can people find you? How can people find Erie? What's the best way for them to reach out to you if they need to hear from your more of your
wisdom? You can find us at eriefamilyhealth.org, and you can reach me at mhilton@eriefamilyhealth.org. I'm happy to answer any questions. And thank you for the chance to share the work that we do at Erie and the work we've done together, Sherry. Thank you for your partnership.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate your time.